est le patron, le CEO of CISAC, la Confédération internationale des sociétés d'auteurs et de compositeurs dans le monde. J'ai juste besoin de prendre ma petite liste de questions sur laquelle nous avons travaillé. Okay. Well, Gadi, welcome. We're very happy to have you here with us today. You've seen the previous conference. But first of all, I would like to ask you which music or which artist you listened to under your shower this morning, just to know what are your personal musical taste before we go to the serious questions.
Okay. Well, actually, I don't listen to music when I shower, but I can tell you maybe what I listened to on the way here.
Okay.
But you have to promise me you don't stop the interview after I was actually listening to Iron Maiden. I just this morning saw that they will play in 2026 again in La Défense Arena.
Good.
Yeah, I saw them actually twice in last July. One of the concerts was in the La Défense Arena. I love that kind of music.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good.
Wasted Years, Seven Son.
Thank you.
Dark, yeah.
Well, let's go to the question. First of all, could you remind us what CISAC is, which is, if I'm not, has 227 members?
Yes. So CISAC is actually the acronym. The French acronym is the Confédération Internationale des Sociétés des auteurs et compositeurs. We are the umbrella organization of all of the, well, SACEMs of the world. All of these societies that collectively manage rights belong to CISAC. And last week at the conference that I attended, I heard one of the CEOs of those societies, the CEO of the American Society, ASCAP, say CISAC is the United Nations of Music. And I love that.
Yes, it's a beautiful definition.
Yeah, it's a wonderful definition. It's not actually... We are not just about music. We represent all of the entities that represent creators and publishers and manage rights on their behalf. We do have some societies that manage other repertoire, which is not music. For example, the rights of film directors and screenwriters, visual artists. I mean, in France, you have a society for each type of repertoire.
So photographs.
Yes, dramatic works, literature,
okay.
But the majority of royalties that are collected around the world, and actually 90% of all the royalties collected by our members are for music. That's the most important, most developed area in collective management. And yes, we have nearly 230 societies like SACEM that belong to us. They operate in 111 countries. Together, they have more than 5 million creators and rights holders that they represent.
As members?
Yes,
okay.
As members, or actually 5 million that are registered on our systems, including the rights holders where the copyright still exists. And
in 2024, you announced the figures for 2023, if I understood, with a growth of 7.6%. More than $13 billion collected. What are the figures of 2024? Do you have some information, or is it too early?
Yeah, it is too early.
Okay.
But I have the information. I will share a little bit today. So every year there is a delay in our report.
Sure.
Because it takes us time to receive all of the figures from all of our members and to process everything. So in about 2 weeks, at the end of the month, we are going to release the figures for 2024. The existing report talks about the figures from 2023, the report we released at the end of 24. And we are again going to report growth, very nice growth, so growth of 7.2% year on year from 2023 to 2024. So in 2024, music royalties collections on behalf of creators and music publishers that entrusted their rights to societies like SACEM, they collected 12.6 billion euros. So I guess it's about 13.5 billion US, maybe a little bit more. And the interesting figure I checked, if you look at the last 10 years, so from 2015 to 2024, the growth was more than 70% in royalties collections. And every time I see these figures and I look at these charts, I understand why so much money goes to buying catalogs and why hedge funds and private investors, because it really is an asset and rights that continue for the long term. And I don't know how many people noticed, but when I saw the chart that was on the screen that looked at the recording industry numbers, and I used to work for many years in the recording industry, the recording industry suffered from a very, very I would say quite dramatic decline when online piracy started in the late 90s. You would know that from your previous role. And it took at least 10 years for this to stop and then to stabilize a couple of years, and then the industry started going up, and really it's skyrocketing now.
The figures on the screen at the beginning of the previous conference, yes, was over 20 years.
20 years. Yeah. But a big part of that, from 1999, which accidentally was also the year that Napster was launched. The industry was really, the recording industry was really in decline. If you look at our charts, at our figures, the figures that represent the collections on behalf of music creators and publishers, it was not like that. There's a gradual but very steady and actually very promising increase throughout this period. We had a slight decrease during the pandemic years, mostly because venues shut down. And I remember, you know, in 2020, we were horrified and thought, okay, people are going to lose between 30 and 50% of their income.
So this continuous growth was mainly supported by live performance?
So what happened during the pandemic is that it stopped, right,
sure.
live, but digital started going up very dramatically. And so we saw an increase in digital, which really balanced the decline in everything else. And now, in the last 2 years, when also the live concerts came back, we see the collections going up, and this is why we continually see growth year on year.
Over the figures, Gadi, what is the role and work carried out by CISAC in defending authors and composers? Your chairman, Björn Ulvaeus, from ABBA, regularly speaks on this subject. What are your main battles at CISAC?
Well, we do everything we can, first of all, to make sure that the rights are protected, that there is legislation around the world that protect the interests of creators and that allows us or our members to collect the royalties on their behalf. So a lot of it is digital. Of course, the main battle in the last couple of years before AI was about user-generated content platforms to make sure that we can collect from YouTube and services like that. And generally the digital market. Now a lot of it is artificial intelligence, but also generally just to protect the systems of collective management, because without that, the creators will not earn their living and will not have that income coming. And
what is the proportion of countries who already adopted a legislation protecting creators all over the world?
Generally, I think almost every country that I know has a
As
copyright law.
legislation.
Yeah, the question starts to be more the more interesting questions is, first of all, what are the international obligations? Because sometimes countries do not undertake to protect foreign rights. And even if they do, sometimes it's not at the same level, or generally some countries just don't have enough or strong enough protection. So we find ourselves many times lobbying governments. We have something very big now in Korea, which is a huge music market, but it's very difficult to collect from places that play music in public for many years, and that's a very important source of revenue for creators. But again, I mean, the main challenge for us today is artificial intelligence, and the main work that we are doing is to convince governments. I mean, you asked previously about the opt-out and things like that. Our biggest challenge now is to work with governments and decision makers to make sure that they understand that we need to have the same level of protection also in the era of artificial intelligence.
Does CISAC provide its member with a kind of strategy regarding AI, opt-out, litigation, legislation, etc.?
Well, we do a lot in that area. So the first thing we do, and we help all of our members in all of these nearly 120 countries, is to understand what should be the message to their governments and decision makers. And the message generally today is we need transparency, we need consent from the creators, and we need remuneration. And what that means is that, first of all, there needs to be an obligation for artificial intelligence companies to tell us what they're using. And this is where the transparency comes from. We don't know what they're using. It's not like Cecile mentioned earlier that SACEM is doing what is called claiming. They receive all of the reports from Spotify and Amazon and Apple and YouTube about everything that was used, and then they make their claims and say, we own the rights here, we own the rights here. If we don't know from the AI companies what they are using, how can we license that? So that's the first thing. Even before everything else, we need these obligations. Then we need them to be under an obligation to receive the consent from the creator, from the rights holder. We need them to, consent means a license. They need to sit with us, get a license, and then finally pay for that. And that's the big battle today. I mean, you may have heard that Steam, the society in Sweden, announced that they've reached a license.
Yes. And so?
Yeah, so it's very good news.
I saw this announcement, and it was really inspiring and interesting seeing that a collective management organization created a kind of license towards the AI companies. But does it work? What is your own position on this first initiative?
Well, first of all, it's a wonderful precedent, and it shows that it can be done. And if in the early days of YouTube and other digital services we heard, like we always do, that this is a new technology, this is different, it cannot work now, that we need to change the rules of the game because now, you know, this new technology will contribute so much, so you guys may need to, you know, take a step back. No, I mean, what Steam did showed that you can sit down with a responsible AI company and negotiate something that will work for both parties. So what they've negotiated, I'm not the best person to comment on that, but my understanding from them is that what they negotiated is, first of all, the obligation to follow the work. So that company will report to Steam which works they ingested into their systems, and actually also the output, which works are involved in the output that comes out of these systems so that a license can be granted. But beyond the details themselves, it proves that these companies can actually do that. And we heard many times, and I think also someone mentioned in the previous discussion, that the AI companies say, oh, we don't know what's going on. And I remember the last time I was speaking at Mama in 2 years ago, I think it was, at the Q&A, someone, and of course, 2 years is a long time when we talk about artificial intelligence, but someone in the QA session took the microphone and said, you know what, I don't know what you're talking about, we can't do that. We cannot, we don't know what our systems are doing. And I said, well, first of all, it's really scary because your systems are not just about music. It's very scary if you're telling me you don't know what the monster you built is doing.
Sure.
And second, I'm sure you can integrate that into your system because we heard also from YouTube that they don't know initially what is being uploaded. And now, I mean, you just mentioned before, they are very proud of paying so much to the music industry. It may not be enough, but they are now proud of paying. It's all because there's a legal obligation and we find a market solution where they have to report and we claim our rights and the royalties for the creators.
Should the AI Act, which concerns only European countries, be extended in another country? Is it a strong basis in terms of legislation to be copied, if I can say so, in other countries, from CISAC point of view?
The short answer is the principles, yes, the implementation, no. And I will explain why. When the AI Act was adopted, we very much welcomed it because we saw a few things that were very important in the AI environment. The first one was that the AI companies have to respect copyright. They have to respect the rights. The second one is that they need to be transparent. So we went around the world and told governments, look at what the EU did. This is a great example for what you should do yourself. And then just a couple of months ago, the European Commission got to the point when they need to decide how it's going to be implemented. And then it was the moment when we really felt the pressure they were under from the technology sector. And they've adopted a couple of documents that really watered down what it means to be transparent. They don't need to report about everything, just I think the top 10 sources. They don't really, I mean, when it comes to copyright, there's too many provisions there that make it much weaker than we had hoped. So in principle, yes, we like the idea. The implementation is difficult. And I personally also see a lot of practical challenges with the whole concept of opt-outs. Because if content was already scanned, how do you know if it was, you know, after the opt-out or before the opt-out, and you really have no way of knowing whether the AI company stopped scanning your content or if they removed what they've already scanned, and maybe they even scanned it when it was legal. So what does it mean now when suddenly, you know, after the opt-out, it's illegal to do what they did a year ago? So there's so many practical questions around that we will still need to see how it's going to work.
So in the end, as usual, negotiation and licensing is the best way to work with the AI technology.
Of course, like it was with any other technology that came into the market, I
Yes.
think.
Well, I asked the question because what we read everywhere is that, of course, the music business, especially the music business, had to face from the 19th century different technologies that were disrupting the music business, and this music business has always been in capacity to adapt itself and negotiate with these new technologies and the companies that were behind those technologies, and in the end create more value for music. Television has not killed radio, but this time with AI, I hear many people saying this time it's different. It's so brutal, it's so violent that we are not sure that once again music business will be in capacity to adapt and negotiate with those giants.
It's different now. It's different because it's the first time that technology changes the way content is created. Broadcasting, recording, everything else changed the way content is distributed, the way it reaches consumers, the way audience enjoy music or other forms of art. AI changes the way it is created, so it raises new challenges. But I don't see it as a threat if we get to the point where we can sit around the table with those behind this technology and negotiate deals. And there's also something very interesting. I've been long enough in the industry to see how it reacted when digital arrived, you know, in the late 90s, and how it reacts now with AI. And in the late 90s, you heard the same people, some of them are still the key people in the recording company, record producers and others, they fought digital. They really fought. I mean, the industry brought litigation. That strategy was completely different. Every article was about we need to shut down these services, and there were some in some countries chasing uploaders, individuals who used peer-to-peer networks, and of course websites and peer-to-peer services. And today everyone is talking about licensing, and even 2 years ago when it came to the market, you know, the CEO of Universal and others immediately said we need to find a way to license it. And you mentioned our president, so CISAC's president Bjorn Ulvaeus from ABBA. He's a big fan of AI, and he always says, I don't think he hides the fact that he's using artificial intelligence to create new music. I think he recently said in an interview that he's even doing it to help him write a new musical. So he's still very active, he still creates a lot, and he's openly saying, I'm using AI, but all of my works are there, all of the works of many other artists are there. We need to be paid for that. We need to be remunerated for that, because like any other technology, without the content, without the human-created content, it means nothing, and they have nothing to offer. You know, last night just for my own amusement, I asked ChatGPT what is the worth of OpenAI, how much the company is worth. And you know, we cannot trust ChatGPT with everything, but I guess, you know, it should give us a reliable answer when it comes to the parent company. Yeah. And it was, I think, 500 billion. And I also saw that in the first half of the year, they say they generated revenues of 4 billion. That's huge, and it's just one single company. And I didn't say that, but the whole sector that we represent in the music side, everyone, including SACEM and ASCAP in the US, and all of these guys together collect from digital services about 4 billion. So all of the digital royalties that are collected around the world don't even come up to half a year of OpenAI. I mean, these are huge companies, and they have the capacity and the resources to respect rights and to pay for the creators. I don't think they have the incentive or the legal incentive they need, and this is where we need decision makers and governments and legislators to tell them, guys, like any other technology that uses creative content, you need to sit down with the owners of the rights in that content and negotiate.
And on the other end, it's also difficult to hear them telling us that technically they are not in capacity to identify all the creators that they use to feed artificial intelligence.
And this is why I was so pleased to see what Steam negotiated and signed,
Sure.
because it shows that an AI company can, when they want to.
Steam is the Swedish
Society. The
society,
Swedish
yes.
SACEM, yes.
The Swedish SACEM, thank you. Yes, that's a very good example, and we, of course, we will follow it very closely. Back to the technical issues. What is the role of CISAC? What is the importance of data for your members? Because we all know that it's the key to do properly their job, which is collect and mostly distribute. So is there, on this aspect of the activities of CMOs, a kind of challenge? What are the challenges that you have to face?
Yes, so I think it's very obvious now that data is the holy grail of the music industry now. It's the most important, it's the backbone of everything that's happening today. And we play a big role in helping our societies use data, use good data in different ways. So the first one is we are in charge of the international identifiers for the musical works and also for the rights holders. So there's the ISWC code. Many here in the audience may be familiar with that. That's the code that identifies the composition and the musical works, the ISWC, yes. And ISWC is...
ISWC for the audiovisual works?
No, the ISWC is for the musical work.
Okay.
The ISRC is for the recording of that work.
All right.
And there's the IPI, which is for the publishers and for the creators. And we are in charge of the IPI and the ISWC. It's actually ISO standards. We are in charge of that and managing that. And there's another thing that we are doing. It's called SysNet. It's actually a net. So SysNet is the network of all of the databases in all around the world. So SACEM has their own registry of the works that they are managing on behalf of their creators. And every other society has that. We operate the network. You mentioned previously a word that I will not repeat, something that starts with G, about some initiatives that were in the past.
Yeah.
So we are not the GRD, but we are a network that connects between all of the local databases, and actually the big project we have now is to replace that with a central registry that instead of connecting different databases, everyone will feed into one central registry so that there'll be one reliable, trustworthy source of data about musical works. And that's a big part of what we're doing. It's also a big challenge because for many years it was more distributed. The codes were assigned in different countries. So we started by bringing all of the codes under one central cloud-based system that also assigns all the codes centrally. And now we are just bringing all of this network of different databases into one central source. So, yeah.
Okay, Gadi, I have one last question because we give the floor to the audience, but for that last question I need to, I have a surprise for you. My last question is that I have some good news for you, Gadi, because it is confirmed that Mama will invite you again in 5 years to talk with us once more about the author's rights. And here is a crystal ball to help you to tell us what you will tell us about within 5 years.
Let's see. I think that if we sit here in 5 years, we will talk about the licenses that were issued to AI companies. I hope it will not take 5 years. Maybe it will be in one of the previous mamas. But I really think this is where the industry is going, and learning from history. We were always in that situation where a new technology comes to the market and everyone is telling us, oh, this is a new disruptive technology that will change the world, so that you have to understand things have changed and you cannot collect for that, or the creators cannot be paid for that because it's impossible and it's difficult and you have to understand. And at the end of the day, you know, if society has an interest in protecting its creative community and its culture and cultural diversity and cultural heritage, we find ways to make sure that these creative people can continue to make a living, and that all of their business partners, the publishers, the record labels, everyone else, you know, that whole ecosystem can continue to exist. So I think this is where we are going. We're just at this point in time where we are learning to adjust to this new technology, and I think these companies are realizing that it's not the Wild West, and they have to abide by same principles that have been around for, you know, for 200 years at least.
When the blockchain appeared a few years ago, we were told that it was the end of the collective management organizations, and in the end it's not. Will we still have as many or maybe more collective management organizations within 5 years with all those technologies that might allow all creators to negotiate directly with the users?
You know, I think that the concept of collective management will continue to exist for a very simple reason. No one is taking care of the interests of creators like collective management organizations do. Entities like SACEM are the only ones, when you think about the industry, are the only ones where on the board of directors, they are the creators and the publishers, of course, but I don't think there's any other company or entity in the whole music industry where the creators are behind the wheel and can make decisions and participate in the governing bodies of the industry, of parts of the industry that represents them. So I think this concept will continue to exist because no one is protecting them like these societies. But I also think that because of digital, and it was also mentioned before, there will be more cooperation between entities. There will be more consolidation of efforts, because it's also a question of costs. It costs a lot of money to collect from people like Spotify or YouTube. It will probably cost even more to collect and to manage rights in artificial intelligence. This is why you have hubs like the one that SACEM mentioned with so many societies, and I think we will see more forces joining as the industry continues to progress.
Thank you, Gadi. I love all those positive things that you've seen in my crystal ball. So thank you very much. That's a beautiful conclusion before we go to the question. We have to conclude? Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry for the questions.
In 5 years.
I can lend you my crystal ball if you want to see the future of collective management. Well, it's time to conclude. Thank you, Gadi Oron, CEO of CISAC. Thank you for your attention, and have a good mama.
Thank you, merci. Thank you.